Well, hey everybody, I'm Joshua.
And I'm Caleb.
And I'm Israel Hanna.
Actually, he's like Moses.
What?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, thank you for bringing me across the Jordan.
Oh, you're welcome.
Finally.
Look, it's your 3500th anniversary. We figured it's only right for you to finally let's get a peek at it.
That's wonderful. Give me a hug.
It's not exactly in pristine condition anymore, but you get the idea, right?
Take a look at what's happening this week on the Bearded Bible Brothers. Wow, look at that. This is the view that Moses saw. And God brought him to the top of the mountain to view the promised land, except I think he had a clear day.
And incredible vision.
Incredible vision. I believe God gave him eagle eye vision, you know, to see across the land. I mean, there's the tip of the Dead Sea, right there, the northern tip. I just wish Josh was here to view this with us.
He's missing out.
Hold on, let me see if I can get him online. He's getting better. Josh?
Oh,
How you feeling, bud?
good morning, brother.
Oh, thank you for waking me up.
Oh, you start to feel a little bit better. I don't think I have as much vomit in my beard today.
Dude, we made it to Mount Nebo. This is where Moses died. You gotta take a look at this. Hold on.
Ooh, sandstorms and haze. I think I see Jawas. It is just as beautiful as I imagined it was going to be.
I just imagine the pain that the Israelites felt when Moses never came back down the mountain. They waited and waited. Scripture says they waited, 30 days after that moment. And he was their leader. I mean, yeah, there were some rough times. They wanted to stone him a lot. But they still had that love for him because he was the one who brought him to freedom. Yes, it was God himself, but he was their voice. There's so many times that they could have heard directly from God, Shoshana, but they chose to use a vassal instead. They said, you speak to God for us, Moses, and we'll listen. They were too afraid to hear from him themselves.
Hey.
What's that, Josh?
Do they still have that awesome replica of the bronze snake up on the pole?
Yeah, of course they have the bronze snake here. All right, he wants to see the snake. Hold on.
Up, down a little bit. A little bit right. No, hold it. Right.
Deuteronomy 34, 1-4. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the south, and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. All right, look at that. The bronze serpent. Oh, man, yes, this is not where it happened. Even Josh knows this is not where the event took place, but it's a powerful reminder of what sin leads to. Sin leads to death, but also the redemption of Yeshua here, as they have that monument down there. Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And this is the promise of our redemption, Shoshana. Even though people would fail like Moses, God still made a way for his sins to be forgiven. And it was just one mistake. What's up with that?
One mistake. Dude hit a rock when he was supposed to be speaking to it. He tried to recreate what God already did through him. Like, he already hit a rock before and water came out. And instead of doing this new thing God asked of him, he reacted out of anger, and it led to him never getting to see the promised land.
Obedience matters. I mean, it really does. Even sometimes when we think we're doing something good to help out God or just do it our own way and we have good intentions, God just wants obedience. Just like to Saul, he said through Samuel, obedience is better than sacrifice. Okay, you can give God all these gifts, but if your heart is not obedient to him, it doesn't matter to him. That's all he wants.
Obedience is better than sacrifice. You look at Moses, who was faithful his entire life, leading this group of people for decades as they continued to do what was wrong. But in that knee-jerk reaction, in that moment, he didn't listen to God, and he paid the price for it. Regardless of how we feel, our job is to do what God said, nothing else.
Well, this is where you show up, Josh, because before Moses went to the top of the mountain, he didn't come thinking, oh, everything's going to be cool. He knew he was coming to his death. God said, all right, you're going to be gathered to your fathers, but before you do that, he said, you need to take Joshua in sight of all the people, commission him. This is very important. There had to be a passing of the baton that people saw visually. They needed to know that God was backing this new leader. And he was already Moses' servant for decades, serving him faithfully. And now he was going to step into the role of being the man who brought everyone into the promised land. And that's so important. But now it's time, Josh, to enter the promised land. I hope you're getting better, because we got to cross the Jordan River and make that path that the Israelites took many years ago. All right, let's go. This way. Joshua 1:1-3. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, as I said to Moses.
The Bearded Bible Brothers is an outreach of Zola Levitt Ministries. Visit levitt.com to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Levitt Letter, or call 1-800-WONDERS. Check out our resources we have available on our online store, or learn more about our tours to Israel, Greece, and Petra. You can also visit beardedbiblebros.com to subscribe to weekly digital updates through email and watch our online videos and content. Your donations and love gifts help us continue our mission to bring the gospel to the Jew first. We thank you for your faithful support.
Our resource for this program, the book, The Mountains of Israel, the Bible and the West Bank by Norma Archbold. A profound ignorance exists today concerning the land of Israel, thanks to the false picture presented by news media. The so-called Palestinians claim their land was stolen by invading Jews. Learn the true origins of Judea and Samaria, the incorrectly named West Bank, and why this territory belongs to the Jewish people. Call 1-800-WONDERS or visit levitt.com for the Mountains of Israel. Joshua 2:1. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go, look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. Well, we finally made it to Jericho, and it feels good to be here. We're in territory that's called the West Bank. Leaves a dirty taste in your mouth. It's really called Judea and Samaria. This is territory given to the tribe of Judah. There's a lot of misbranding going on that's not biblical truth, but we like to clear things up. That's why we came here to tell the true story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho.
Jericho was sitting there as the big baddie. First thing when you enter the promised land, you got to get through me, bud. I'm 800 feet below sea level. That's right, my air tastes bad. It tastes like grandma's basement. I am 3,500 feet below the level of Jerusalem. You're not used to fighting here. I'm 17 miles away. What are you going to do with me? It was a fortress to be dealt with. But this is the oldest walled city in the world, according to archaeologists.
Not only the oldest, but the strongest militarily. It was fortified.
That's right.
In a way that considering attacking it was ridiculous.
So let's take a look at how fortified this tell really was.
All right, we're off.
Joshua 2:2-3, the king of Jericho was told, Look, some of the Israelites have come there tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land.
Some historians and archaeologists believe that Rahab actually held an inn, some like a brothel. Either way, everyone came into her house that was international traveler outside the city. But she saw something different in these 2 spies. And this prostitute with a heart of gold decided to hide these Hebrews under flax on her rooftop. And then when the officials of the city were gone, she brought them out. And she told them why she saved their lives. She gave this statement of faith that we talked about last week. Her belief that the God of Israel was the one true God, that he was going to wipe out all these enemy gods. But she still needed an assurance of safety for her own house.
So she went to the spies and she begged them. She said, you have to spare my family. And they made a pact, an agreement, a covenant, a commitment. Our lives for your lives. And the agreement was that once the fighting starts, that she had to hang a scarlet piece of cloth outside of the window, and that way they would know which one was her family, and she would be spared. Then the spies, as she helped them escape, returned to Joshua with the news of what had to be done. Truly the Lord has delivered all the land into our hands, for indeed all the inhabitants of the country are faint-hearted because of us.
Hebrews 11:30-31. By faith the walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around them for 7 days. By faith the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient.
So it's interesting. We're standing here in this place in the north where they say Rahab the harlot's house was actually, when the walls came tumbling down, she was the one that actually hid the spies away and was rescued from the disaster, the downfall of Jericho itself, and ends up being in the messianic line that gives birth to Yeshua.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
How God grafts in a unclean Gentile woman who ends up having a relationship, a marriage with someone from the tribe of Judah, and eventually becomes King David and Yeshua's line. And all this here is just amazing evidence that just screams biblical accuracy of what's going on.
You know, at the northernmost wall, the story goes, and the walls came tumbling down. If you ever sang that in the felt board class, I think they call that Sunday school. They found something interesting. A German archaeologist found that of all these massive walls that have indeed tumbled down, there was one portion of the wall on this northern side, as we just pointed to, Rahab's house, that did not tumble down. God's commitment to her was resolute. When they marched around the walls and they let out a shout, all of the walls fell to the ground except for the one spot that was promised would be saved. And as these two just spoke about the genealogy, not only that, but in one decision, Rahab ensured that she would become the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother of Yeshua. You may think today that you're out of it. You may think you've done too much. You may think there's no hope for you, but all it takes is one choice, and the Father can use you to do incredible things.
Joshua 5:13-15. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied, "but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so.
Joshua's got a predicament. As any good leader, he goes, what am I supposed to do? And instead of just thinking under his own power, he goes out to walk around and to take a breath. And all of a sudden, he's approached by someone. Now, this someone isn't an angel, like many people might have suggested before. We know this because that angel doesn't go, "Stop worshiping me." No, we actually believe that he encountered a theophany of Yeshua in this time period, who gives him the information, the confidence needed to say, what you got to do, bud, is go march around that wall. Think of that for 1 second. Yeshua meets Yehoshua face to face in this moment as he gives them the orders for what would become one of the most incredible stories ever told.
The name means absolutely everything, Josh. You know, originally Joshua's name was Hoshea or Hosea, which means salvation. It was God himself who renamed him in Moses' presence. He named him Yehoshua, which is Joshua. And really, that is the name of Yeshua, Jesus. We read in Nehemiah 8:17, when he gives an account of Joshua, he calls him Yeshua ben Nun instead of Yehoshua ben Nun, because Yeshua was just a nickname. So it's very interesting that his name means Yahweh is salvation, Yehoshua. And so many times I believe Joshua got discouraged, because even from day one, when he went into the presence of a tent meeting, he saw the Shekinah, and first thing God says, be strong, Joshua, have courage. And throughout the book of Joshua, over and over again, God keeps on telling him, Joshua, be strong, have good courage. We already knew he was a man of faith, but God kept on having to speak it into him, to reiterate to him, to build him up with life, because he was about to take on a task that was a mirror of Mashiach. He was about to bring the children of Israel from this desert, which represents our lives in this natural world, into the promised land, which is a representation of heaven. And that is why Yehoshua, Yeshua, is so important to the story.
Joshua 6, 2-5. And the Lord, this theophany of Yeshua, said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand, its king and the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all of you men of war. You shall go around the city once. This you shall do 6 days, and 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. But the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. It shall come to pass, when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear all the sound of the trumpet, that all people shall shout with a great shout. Then the wall of the city will fall down flat. All the people shall go up, every man straight before him.
I think it's very interesting. The archaeological evidence for the story of Jericho is all around this. Now, there's always contention with the enemy trying to lie about dating methods and things. Yet the story is here, and as you can see down, the depth of this is so hard to imagine. I mean, if we fell, we would be dead. It is so deep, so many layers. And they've discovered that burnt layer that would be during the mid-15th century when the Israelites came here. Actually, it would be, 1406 BC? That was there. They found burnt layer, they found ash. They even found giant storage jars of barley, of grain, because it was the harvest season. They got all the barley in, and then it was burnt up all around them. Now, if the siege had been long, and the Israelites, years long, they would have eaten all the storage jars, but it was such a snap event that all the food was left behind when it was destroyed. They even found the walls like Josh described. These walls were imposing because there was 2 layers of walls. There's the inner city, and then there's this Acropolis that had a second wall of the city. Just the first wall, Josh, you had a tell of dirt, and then a wall on top of it made of brick, mud brick. That was 40 feet tall. And it was so thick with dirt first, and then all that. You couldn't do a battering ram because you couldn't get high enough to batter through the wall part because there was so much earth from the tell. And all that, instead of, if there was an earthquake came, Josh, and it would shake the walls, it would be in pieces. Instead, the walls went rup, flat. And that's what archaeologists found here, just surrounding this flat walls, to where the Israelites went straight up to the top, except for that one point where Rahab's house was. This is evidence. I don't care what people say about the dating record, there's true evidence. Even right now, guys, it's really hard. We're in the Palestinian territory. Palestinian Authority controls this site. In the most recent years, they have been covering up the evidence that would verify this biblical claim. They've been filling up holes with dirt. They've been tearing down stuff. It's all because they don't want a Jewish claim to the land, and that is what we're here to tell the story of.
And I want you to think about how God works. God brings light and revelation. In fact, the Bible says there's nothing hidden that won't be revealed. So you can look at the actions of people and you can say, does this action follow God's heart and his precepts? So if the people here are covering up and hiding, there's a reason for that. They're covering up and hiding the truth because the truth supports the word of God in the Bible. So don't for one second believe the words of anyone who would try to cover up instead of reveal. Joshua 6, 15-16. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose early about the dawning of the day and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner. On that day only they marched around the city 7 times, and the 7th time it happened, when the priests blew the trumpets, that Joshua said to the people, Shout, for the Lord has given you the city.
Joshua 6:26. Then Joshua charged them at that time, saying, Cursed be the man before the Lord, who rises up and builds this city Jericho. He shall lay its foundations with his firstborn, and with his youngest he shall set up its gates. This is the Mount Jericho behind us, and you can see the real Jericho around us, or at least this is what modern Jericho really looks like. This place is very interesting because I have one last story to tell. The god that was worshipped here was the moon god Yerach. Jericho, is the name of it. The city was named after that patron god. He had a wife, Nikal, and they were this Canaanite family god that was honored and deified here. They would perform many ceremonies to these gods. Child sacrifice was a big thing that God had a problem with, that the Canaanites performed. And here, to be blessed and to be honored, to have continual reproductive rights, they sacrificed their firstborn. Many will say that never happened here. Well, an archaeologist, Walter Garstang, found just that. He found that built within the walls of Jericho were jars. and there were fetal skeletons in that jars placed upside down. He also uncovered the same kind of jars we've seen at Tel Gezer, at Tel Megiddo. We visited those places before. And the evidence of this was documented in the Cambridge Sentinel, March 29, 1930. The truth and the evidence, the enemy continues to try to cover up. Now Joshua, his final act here, when he was going to leave the city, was to curse the city. He cursed that anyone who would try to return here and would try to rebuild these walls, their firstborn and their lastborn child would be a resulted death of that act, because he understood what they did here by sacrificing their children here. Hillel of Bethel did that exact act, and his children died because of it. Then, of course, this happened in 1 Kings 16:34, around 875 BC. It was God saying how serious it was. He did not want this city to continue. But the Israelites did rebuild that city, and it was still a functioning city at the time of Yeshua.
We look at this land, one of the most disputed lands in the history of mankind. We know that even today, that will not be resolved. In fact, this is going to go all the way to the very end.
Yes.
But if you take a step back from all of the different arguments, all of the different quote unquote facts and figures, all of the stories and evidence that we have that exists, that shows true ownership, and you just look at the wisdom of the situation in the land around me right now, we're standing right now in Jericho, in the West Bank, in this land that the Palestinians have claimed as their own, and yet look at the land around you. It is covered in trash, in garbage. It has been discarded. They can yell and they can scream and they can say that Israel has no rights. But yet they show the true evidence of where their care and belief is. When you look around you, you see that no care, no love, nothing is given, no signs of ownership, no sign of parenthood, nothing. That's the type of thing I find around me, and yet they fight for this land as though it's a part of their being, as though if it's taken away from them, they will lose everything, and yet they don't take care of it. They don't show any true love for it. It's just a mantra that they're fighting for because it's something that they have to have. That's what the enemy is. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He comes to covet that he doesn't have. He comes to accuse. He comes to take something that doesn't belong to him. And it only works when you give up your birthright. But when God's given you something and he's ordained it to be yours, you grab a hold of it and you fight for it because that is yours. It's your covenant. It's your birthright. And this is Israel's land, not because anyone deserves it, but because the God of the universe who created it says, I have given it to Israel.
All right, guys, I got a plan.
Right.
You know, when Joshua and the children of Israel marched around the wall and then they got the city, well, the Palestinian Authority owns Jericho right now. The West Bank, I say we march around this Jericho, and I expect to see some results.
I need to tell you, Caleb, that my friend and I and a few others marched around a $9.5 million building, which we now own today as a result of marching around it. It works. It is powerful. Let's do it.
All right, well, I got my big feet. Moses, would you lead the way?
I will most likely.
Moses gets to lead us for the first time.
Here we go now.
Whew, that's a danger stick.
How many times are we going around? 7?
I say 7's pretty good.
Yeah.
After the Canaanite and Amorite dominion over the land, the next big baddies, the tough guys of the land, the Egyptians, show up on the scene to take over Canaan.
That's right. That's why we decided to come here to Beit Shean. If you dig deep enough here, yeah, you see Roman ruins round about. This was the Roman city part that you see, but underneath those Roman ruins was a massive Egyptian administrative complex. In fact, they found a really fancy statue of Ramses III here. They've even found inscriptions from other reigns of Seti I and Ramses II. So this was a big hotspot for the Egyptians to set up headquarters, take the monies from the Canaanites, and run things smoothly in Canaan.
Pretty smart. Whoa.
Wow, look at this.
You can see my mom from up there. Hey, Mom.
I can project. Woohoo! You know, guys, Egypt first gained dominion over Canaan proper in the mid-1500s BC when Thutmose III had this climactic battle at Megiddo in which they held dominion over all the city-states of Canaan. You know, he was the same pharaoh that is said to have killed all the baby boys in Egypt when he found that the Israelites were a threat to his rule. Well, the Egyptians set up their territory mainly in the lowlands. They had administrative centers in Jaffa and Megiddo, here in Beit Shean, and they were mainly about accepting tribute from these territories. You know, their administration was not as dominating as one might say, but they still installed these vassal kings over the territory to make sure that they stayed in line. They had a great influence over the Canaanites when it came to the gods that they worshiped. That's why you see temples, even here, there's Egyptian temples that are littered about that people have found here with these articles and icons that people incorporated into their pantheon of gods. Now, by the time you come to Amenhotep II, which we believe is the Pharaoh of the Exodus, he had a problem on his hands. He just lost his workforce, which was the Israelites. And the Israelites were heading to Canaan, his territory that he held under dominion as a vassal state. We have documentation, Josh, that Amenhotep II quickly tries to outrun the Israelites into Canaan. He gathers a workforce of Apiru. These are slaves, these are nomads, some Canaanites, brings them back to Egypt to try to restructure. He knows that he cannot contend with the Israelites. Therefore, when the Israelites come into Canaan, everything's ripe for the picking. There is not very many contingencies of Egyptians left. And that's really God's plan when he sent the 10 plagues to really cripple the Pharaoh, because he knew that the Egyptians held Canaan under dominion. It was a genius plan so that mainly the Egyptians in the lowlands might have been a few that survived. And that is the territory, according to the book of Judges, that the Israelites weren't successful in obtaining the territory of the Promised Land.
I love that the plan is, okay, Israelites go out. He's like, uh-oh, I need more workers. He goes and gets more workers from the place that would have fought them on their way out. So now they got nobody fighting them as they're going forward.
Yes.
And just open them. Genius.
God's master plan.
It's also they got too greedy. Like, I'm only going to set up a city to get me some sweet monies. All right, you're a shakedown city and you're a shakedown city.
It's important to realize that God doesn't do anything by accident. Yes, he sent the 10 plagues on Egypt to show his power. Each of the plagues was a mockery of an Egyptian god, showing that he was the supreme God, El Elyon. But even when you look at the grand scheme of things, he wanted to cripple the Egyptian government, their power and dominance, because he was leading his people straight for the Promised Land, which was controlled by Egypt. And why would a God bring his people out of Egypt only to bring them back into contest with the Egyptians? That's why he brought them to their knees. And just like with the Canaanites that were fighting amongst each other, giants versus giants in the time of Abraham, he was clearing the way far in advance to keep his covenant promises to Abraham, getting rid of giants, getting rid of Egyptians, and then he brought his people, which all they had to do was obey him and clear out the rest of the Canaanites. We'll see what happens. And as you go, don't forget to Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim.
Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Did you know the Bearded Bible Brothers is an outreach of Soul Levitt Ministries? That means we are entirely donor-funded. Consider giving at levitt.com. You can also join the Bearded Bible Bonanza to access additional content at patreon.com/beardedbiblebonanza. Please support our mission to spread the gospel of Yeshua by subscribing to our social media and sharing our online messages. And as always, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.